The mortgage payment notification popped up on my phone screen just as Laura walked through the door, designer gym bag slung over her shoulder like a badge of honor. I stared at the number, 0 balance remaining, and felt that familiar surge of satisfaction. 15 years of construction work, overtime shifts, and careful budgeting had finally paid off. Literally. "Jason, we need to talk," Laura announced, not bothering with hello. She dropped her bag by the entrance, designer sneakers squeaking against our hardwood floors. The floors I'd installed myself, by the way, saving us $3,000 in contractor fees. "Sure thing, honey. How was your workout?" I kept my voice level, though something in her tone made my stomach tighten. After 12 years of marriage, I knew that particular inflection. It meant trouble. Laura ran her fingers through her perfectly styled blonde hair, the kind that cost $200 every 6 weeks at that fancy salon downtown. "That's what I want to discuss. I've been thinking about our financial situation." I almost laughed. Our financial situation was better than it had been in years. The house was nearly paid off, both cars were running fine, and the girls' college funds were growing steadily. But Laura had a different perspective on money, specifically, that we never had enough of it. "What about our finances?" I asked, settling into my recliner. The thing was 10 years old and showing wear, but it was comfortable. Laura had been dropping hints about replacing it with something more sophisticated for months. She perched on the edge of our couch, the expensive leather one she'd insisted we needed last spring. "My student loans, Jason. They're still hanging over us like a dark cloud. My parents keep asking when we're going to get serious about paying them off." Ah, there it was. George and Susan Staples, Laura's parents, who treated me like I was some kind of charity case their daughter had married out of misguided sympathy. They lived in one of those gated communities north of town, the kind where the homeowners association had rules about grass height and mailbox colors. George had made his money in oil back in the 80s and never let anyone forget it. "Your student loans are manageable," I said carefully. "We've been making payments on schedule for years." "Manageable isn't the same as handled, Jason." Laura's voice carried that edge it got when she was building up to something. "My parents think we should take out a home equity loan and pay them off completely. It would improve our credit score and show we're serious about our financial future." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at her for a long moment. The home equity loan idea wasn't new. George had been pushing it for months. What bothered me was the way Laura said "our financial future" while talking about her student loans. The loans she'd racked up getting a degree in communications that she'd never really used until landing her current HR job 3 years ago. "Laura, we've discussed this. Taking on more debt to pay off existing debt doesn't make mathematical sense. We're better off continuing the current payment plan." Her jaw tightened. "It's not just about mathematics, Jason. It's about showing my family that we're not just scraping by. We're not scraping by. We're doing fine. Fine isn't enough anymore." She stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked our backyard. The pool sparkled in the afternoon sun, another expense she'd insisted on 2 summers ago. "Kayla Morrison just bought a new BMW. Mindy Chen's husband got promoted to regional manager. Jess Williams is renovating their kitchen with granite countertops." The pool moms. Laura's social circle revolved around a group of neighborhood women who spent their afternoons comparing purchases and gossiping by various backyard pools. I'd never understood the appeal, but Laura treated their approval like some kind of validation. "Good for them," I said. "But we're not the Morrisons or the Chens or the Williams family. We're the Fairburns, and we're doing just fine being ourselves." Laura turned from the window, her expression sharp. "Are we, though? When was the last time you got a promotion? When was the last time you even applied for a better position?" The question hit harder than I expected. I'd been with Morrison Construction for 8 years. working my way up from crew supervisor to project manager. The pay was decent, the benefits solid, and I genuinely enjoyed the work. But Laura saw it as a stepping stone, not a destination. "I like my job," I said simply. "Liking your job and advancing your career are two different things." She sat back down, leaning forward with that intense look she got when she was trying to make a point. "My parents won't respect you until you show some real ambition, until you prove you can provide for their daughter the way they provided for me." The honesty was refreshing, even if it stung. At least she was finally saying what we both knew. George and Susan Staples thought their daughter had married beneath her station. "I understand completely," I said, reaching for my phone. Laura's face brightened, probably thinking I was about to call the bank about that home equity loan. Instead, I opened my banking app and showed her the screen, which is why I paid off our mortgage this morning. The silence that followed was deafening. Laura stared at the phone screen, her mouth slightly open, processing what she was seeing. Zero balance, paid in full. Our house, all 2,400 square feet of it, was officially ours. "How?" she whispered. "Remember that bonus from the Riverside project, and the overtime from the hospital renovation, plus some smart investing and careful budgeting?" I leaned back in my recliner, feeling genuinely proud for the first time in months. I've been working toward this for 2 years. "But my student loans are still your student loans," I said gently. "This was about securing our family's future. Now we have no housing payment, which frees up money for everything else, including your loan payments." Laura's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like anger. "You should have discussed this with me first. Like you discussed wanting to take out a home equity loan with me before talking to your parents about it?" She flinched. "That's different." "How?" "Because my parents were trying to help us." "No, Laura, your parents were trying to help you. There's a difference." The front door slammed, announcing the arrival of our daughters. Beth, 11, burst into the living room with her backpack still on, followed by 8-year-old Janie, who was covered in playground dirt and grinning. "Dad! Mom! Guess what happened at school today?" Janie launched herself at my chair, all elbows and knees and boundless energy. "What happened, kiddo?" I caught her in a hug, grateful for the interruption. "Mrs. Patterson said, I'm the best reader in the whole 2nd grade, and Tommy Martinez threw up in the cafeteria, and it was so gross but also kind of cool because—" "Janie, that's disgusting," Beth interrupted, dropping her backpack with a thud. At 11, she was already developing Laura's sense of propriety. "Nobody wants to hear about Tommy's stomach problems." "I want to hear about it," I said, earning a grateful grin from Janie. "But maybe after you wash your hands and change clothes." Both girls thundered upstairs, leaving Laura and me alone again. The moment felt different now, charged with intention that hadn't been there before. Laura was staring at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "About what?" "About us. About where we're going." She looked up, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. "I don't know if this is what I want anymore, Jason." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I'd suspected for months that Laura was unhappy, but hearing her say it out loud was different. It made everything real. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to feel proud of my life. I want to feel like we're building something together instead of just existing. We have 2 beautiful daughters, a paid-off house and stable jobs. That sounds like building something to me." "It's not enough." The tears were flowing now, but her voice was steady. "I'm sorry, Jason, but it's just not enough anymore." She stood up and walked toward the stairs, pausing at the bottom. "I'm going to my parents' house for dinner tonight. I need some space to think." "What should I tell the girls?" "Tell them I'll be back later." She climbed 3 steps, then stopped. "And Jason, don't wait up." I sat in my recliner long after her car pulled out of the driveway, listening to the sounds of my daughters playing upstairs. The house felt different somehow, like something fundamental had shifted. Maybe it was just knowing that we owned it outright now, or maybe it was Laura's words echoing in my head. Either way, I had the distinct feeling that my carefully planned life was about to get a lot more complicated. 3 weeks later, I was beginning to understand what Laura meant about our life not being enough. She'd started going out more. Girls' nights, workout sessions, dinner with her parents. Always somewhere else. Always with someone else. The house felt emptier even when she was home. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy eat dinner with us anymore?" Janie asked one evening, poking at her chicken nuggets with the focused intensity of a forensic investigator. "Mommy's just busy with work and friends," I said, which was technically true. Laura had been putting in longer hours at her HR job, and her social calendar had definitely expanded. Beth, who missed nothing despite being only 11, gave me a look that was far too knowing for her age. "Is Mommy mad at us?" "No, sweetheart. Mommy's not mad at anyone. Sometimes adults just need time to figure things out." It was a weak explanation, and we all knew it. But what was I supposed to say? That their mother seemed to be pulling away from our family like we were some kind of burden she was trying to shed? The truth was, I was starting to worry. Laura's behavior had shifted dramatically since our conversation about the mortgage. She was distant, distracted, and increasingly critical of everything I did. Last week, she'd complained that I loaded the dishwasher wrong. The week before, it was the way I folded laundry. Yesterday, she'd actually rolled her eyes when I suggested we have a family movie night. I decided to call Ty. Tyrese Carter and I had been friends since high school, back when he was the star linebacker and I was the kid who helped him pass algebra. He'd gone into law enforcement after graduation, spent 10 years as a police officer, and now ran his own private investigation business. More importantly, he was the most level-headed person I knew. "Jason, my man," Ty's voice boomed through the phone. "How's married life treating you?" "That's actually why I'm calling. I need some advice." "Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. What's going on?" I gave him the condensed version, Laura's increasing distance, her criticism, her nights out. Ty listened without interrupting, which was one of his best qualities. "How long has this been going on?" he asked when I finished. "About 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Any idea what triggered it?" I told him about the mortgage payoff and Laura's reaction. Ty was quiet for a long moment. "Jason, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you think Laura might be seeing someone else?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been so focused on her emotional distance that I hadn't considered the possibility of another man. But now that Ty had said it out loud, pieces started falling into place. The new workout clothes, the extra attention to her appearance, the way she guarded her phone. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. God, I hope not. Look, I could be completely wrong, but in my experience, when a spouse suddenly starts pulling away and finding fault with everything their partner does, there's usually a reason, and that reason often has a name. What should I do? Pay attention, notice patterns, and if you really want to know what's going on, I can help you find out. But Jason, be sure you want to know before you ask. Some doors can't be closed once they're opened." That night, I lay in bed, listening to Laura's breathing and thinking about Ty's words. She'd come home around 10:30, claiming she'd been at dinner with her parents. But she'd smelled like wine and expensive cologne, not her father's usual aftershave. I started paying attention. Laura had always been social, but her schedule had become almost frantic. Tuesday night was book club, though she never seemed to read the books. Thursday was yoga class, though she came home energized rather than relaxed. Saturday afternoons were errands, though she rarely came back with shopping bags. The real revelation came on a Wednesday evening. Laura announced she was going to help her mother with some charity event planning. I was cleaning up after dinner when Janie asked if she could call Grandma to say goodnight. Sure, kiddo, I said, handing her the phone. Janie dialed her grandmother's number and waited. After a moment, she frowned. Grandma, it's Janie. Is Mommy there? A pause. Oh, okay. Tell her I said hi when you see her tomorrow. She hung up and looked at me with confusion. Grandma said Mommy isn't there. She said she hasn't seen her since Sunday. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Maybe Mommy went somewhere else first. Maybe, Janie agreed, but she didn't look convinced. That night, I called Ty. I need that help you offered, I said without preamble. You sure about this? No, but I need to know. All right, give me a few days, and, Jason, try to act normal around Laura. Don't let on that anything's changed. Acting normal turned out to be harder than I expected. Every interaction with Laura felt loaded with subtext. When she kissed me goodbye in the morning, I found myself analyzing the gesture. When she asked about my day, I wondered if she was really listening or just going through the motions. The breakthrough came on Friday. I was at the job site when Ty called. Can you meet me for lunch? He asked. I have some information. We met at a diner across town, the kind of place where construction workers and truck drivers grabbed quick meals. Ty was already in a corner booth when I arrived, a manila folder on the table in front of him. Before I show you this, he said, I want you to know that I'm sorry. I really hoped I was wrong. He slid the folder across the table. Inside were photographs. Laura's car in the parking lot of an upscale fitness center. Laura walking into a restaurant with a man I didn't recognize. Laura and the same man sitting close together at what looked like a coffee shop. The man was tall, well-built, with the kind of artificially perfect smile that suggested expensive dental work. He wore a suit in every photo, and his hair was styled with the precision of someone who spent serious time in front of a mirror. Who is he? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Scott Williams, real estate agent, specializes in high-end properties, divorced about 2 years ago, no kids, lives in one of those new condo complexes downtown. Scott Williams. The name sounded familiar, and then I remembered Jess Williams, one of the pool moms. This had to be her ex-husband. How long? I asked. Based on what I could track, at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. 6 weeks. That meant it had started before our conversation about the mortgage, before Laura's sudden dissatisfaction with our life. It put everything in a different context. There's more, Ty said gently. I followed them yesterday. They went to look at houses. Houses? Expensive ones. The kind that require 2 substantial incomes or 1 very large income. I stared at the photographs, trying to process what I was seeing. My wife of 12 years, the mother of my children, was not only having an affair, but apparently planning a future with another man. What do you want to do? Ty asked. I don't know. The honest answer. I felt numb, like I was watching this happen to someone else. I need to think. Take your time, but Jason, be careful. If Laura's planning to leave, she might be setting things up legally and financially. You should probably talk to a lawyer. That evening, I sat in my backyard watching the girls play in the pool. Laura was inside, supposedly working on some reports from her office. The scene looked perfect from the outside, successful suburban family enjoying their beautiful home. But I knew it was all an illusion. Laura came outside around 8, carrying 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one and sat in the chair next to mine. Beautiful evening, she said, and for a moment she sounded like the woman I'd married. Yeah, it is. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Beth help Janie practice floating. It felt almost normal, except for the photographs burning a hole in my memory. Jason, Laura said eventually, I've been thinking about what we discussed a few weeks ago. About the mortgage? About us. About our future. She took a sip of wine, not looking at me. I think we need to consider that maybe we want different things. Such as? I want to feel excited about my life again. I want to feel like I'm growing, not just maintaining. And you can't do that here? With us? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't think so. Not anymore. I wanted to confront her about Scott Williams, about the lies and the secret meetings, but something held me back. Maybe it was the peaceful evening, or maybe it was the sound of my daughters laughing in the pool, or maybe I was just a coward. What are you saying, Laura? I'm saying that maybe we should talk to lawyers. Maybe we should start thinking about what a separation would look like. There it was, out in the open, no more pretending. And the girls? They'll be fine. Kids are resilient. She said it like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. We'll work out custody, make sure they're taken care of. This is really what you want? I think it might be what we both need. I looked at my daughters, splashing and playing without a care in the world, and felt something harden inside my chest. Laura was right about one thing. We did want different things. She wanted excitement and growth and whatever Scott Williams represented. I wanted my family intact. But if she was determined to tear it apart, I was going to make sure she understood the real cost of her freedom. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. Laura and I maintained the pretense of normal family life while quietly preparing for war. She'd started staying late at work more often, and I'd started documenting everything, her absences, her lies, her increasing neglect of basic parental responsibilities. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in late September. I was helping Janie with her math homework when Laura announced she was going out. Where to? I asked, not looking up from the multiplication problems. Book club, she said, the lie rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. Which book are you discussing? Laura paused in applying lipstick. What? The book. What book is your book club reading this month? Oh, she fumbled for a moment. We're doing a mystery novel. You wouldn't know it. Try me. Jason, I don't have time for 20 questions. I'm already running late. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I followed her into the hallway. Laura, wait. She turned, impatience written across her face. What? I know about Scott Williams. The color drained from her cheeks, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Real estate agent, divorced, lives downtown. Ring any bells? For a moment, I thought she might continue the charade. Then her shoulders sagged slightly, and I saw something like relief in her expression. How long have you known? Does it matter? I suppose not. She set her purse down on the hall table. Are you going to make a scene? That depends. Are you going to keep lying to me? Laura walked into the living room and sat on the couch. I followed, closing the door behind us so the girls wouldn't overhear. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said quietly. But it did. Yes, it did. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months she seemed genuinely present. I'm not proud of it, Jason, but I'm not going to apologize for finding someone who makes me feel alive again. And I don't make you feel alive? You make me feel safe, comfortable, stable. She said the words like they were character flaws, but that's not enough anymore. When did it start? About 2 months ago. I met him at that charity auction my parents dragged us to. He was charming and funny and... She trailed off. And what? And he saw potential in me. He didn't see a suburban housewife who should be grateful for what she has. He saw someone worth pursuing. The words stung more than I expected. I see potential in you, Laura. I always have. No, you see the woman you married. You want me to stay exactly the same as I was 12 years ago. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you encouraged me to take risks? To dream bigger? To want more? I started to argue, then stopped. Maybe she had a point. I had gotten comfortable with our life, with the routine and predictability of it all. But that didn't justify what she'd done. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know. Scott thinks we should. I don't care what Scott thinks, I interrupted. I care what you think. What you want. Laura was quiet for a long moment. I want to be happy, Jason. I want to feel like I'm living instead of just existing. And you can't do that with me? I don't think so, I'm sorry. We sat in silence, the weight of 12 years settling between us. Upstairs I could hear the girls getting ready for bed, their voices muffled through the ceiling. I'll stay in the guest room tonight, I said finally. Jason, we'll figure out the details later. Right now I just need some space. That night, lying in the narrow guest bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process the end of my marriage. Part of me felt relieved that the pretense was over, but mostly, I felt angry. Not just at Laura's betrayal, but at her casual dismissal of everything we'd built together. The next morning, Laura was already gone when I came downstairs. The girls were eating cereal and watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that their world had shifted overnight. "Where's Mom?" Beth asked, without looking away from the TV. "She left early for work," I said, which was probably true. "She's been doing that a lot lately," Beth observed. "Yeah, she has." I made coffee and tried to figure out what came next. Laura wanted a divorce. That much was clear. The question was whether she planned to fight dirty or keep things civil for the girls' sake. I got my answer that afternoon when a process server showed up at my job site. "Jason Fairburn?" "That's me." He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served." The papers inside were comprehensive and brutal. Laura was filing for divorce, seeking primary custody of the girls, spousal support, and half of all marital assets. She was also requesting that I move out of the family home immediately. I called Ty from my truck. "She's moving fast," he said after I read him the highlights. "This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. She's been planning this for weeks, maybe months." "What are my options?" "Get a good lawyer, document everything, and prepare for a fight, because that's what this is going to be." That evening, I sat the girls down for the hardest conversation of my life. "Your mom and I need to talk to you about something important," I began. "Are you getting divorced?" Beth asked bluntly. The question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "Kayla Morrison's parents got divorced last year. Her mom acted just like Mom's been acting." "Smart kid. Too smart, maybe." "Yes," I said. "We are." Janie's eyes filled with tears. "Is it because of us?" "No, sweetheart. Absolutely not. This is about problems between your mom and me. It has nothing to do with you girls." "Where will we live?" Beth asked. "We're still working that out, but no matter what happens, both your mom and I love you very much, and we're going to make sure you're taken care of." It was an inadequate explanation for something so life-altering, but it was the best I could do. Both girls cried, and I held them until they fell asleep on the couch. Laura came home around 10, looking surprised to find us in the living room. "You told them," she said. "They deserved to know. I would have preferred to do it together." "When? Between your book club meetings?" Laura flinched. "That's not fair. Neither is having divorce papers served to me at work." I wanted to avoid a confrontation. By ambushing me legally? By protecting myself and the girls? I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing a stranger. The woman I'd married would never have been this calculating, this cold. "You want a war, Laura? Fine. But understand that wars have casualties, and our daughters are going to be caught in the crossfire. It doesn't have to be a war, Jason. It can be civilized. Civilized would have been talking to me before you filed papers. Civilized would have been honest about Scott Williams from the beginning." Her face hardened. "Don't lecture me about honesty. You hired a private investigator to spy on me. After you started lying to me. I was trying to figure things out." "No, you were trying to have it both ways. Keep me as a safety net while you explored your options." Laura walked to the window, her back to me. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I handled this badly, but it doesn't change the fact that we want different things. What does Scott Williams want? She turned around, surprised by the question. What do you mean? I mean, what's his endgame here? Does he want to marry you? Move in together? Or is he just enjoying the thrill of an affair with a married woman? He wants to build a life together. What kind of life? A better one than this. She gestured around our living room. He's successful, ambitious. He understands my potential. And what about the girls? What about them? Are they part of this better life he's promising? Laura hesitated, and in that moment of silence, I had my answer. He's not interested in being a stepfather, I said. It wasn't a question. He's adjusting to the idea. Which means no. Which means it's complicated. I looked at my daughters, still sleeping on the couch, and felt something fierce and protective rise in my chest. Laura could choose Scott Williams over me. That was her right. But she didn't get to choose him over our children. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You can have your divorce. You can have your exciting new life with Scott Williams. But you don't get to take my daughters away from me. And you don't get to walk away from this marriage with half of everything I've worked for. The court will decide. The court will see evidence of your affair, your neglect of the children, and your lies. They'll see a mother who chose her own happiness over her family's stability. Laura's face went pale. You can't prove any of that. Can I? I pulled out my phone and played a recording, Laura on the phone with Scott, discussing their plans to look at houses, complaining about having to deal with the kids during the transition. You recorded me? I documented everything. Every lie, every absence, every time you chose Scott Williams over your responsibilities as a mother. You bastard. No, Laura. I'm a father protecting his children. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating, trying to figure out how much damage I could do. What do you want? She asked finally. I want joint custody. I want to keep the house. And I want you to understand that actions have consequences. And if I agree, then we can keep this civilized. But if you try to take my daughters away from me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of mother you really are. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And from the look in Laura's eyes, she knew I meant every word. The suburban gossip network was more efficient than any news organization I'd ever seen. Within a week of Laura moving out, the entire neighborhood knew about our separation. What they didn't know was the full story. Yet. I was installing security cameras around the house when Kayla Morrison appeared at my fence line, her perfectly manicured nails gripping the wooden slats like talons. Jason, honey, she called out in that syrupy voice she used when fishing for information. How are you holding up? Doing fine, Kayla. Thanks for asking. And the girls? This must be so hard on them. They're resilient kids. She waited for more details, but I focused on adjusting the camera angle. The system was state-of-the-art. Motion sensors, night vision, audio recording. Everything was legal and properly disclosed, but it would capture any activity around my property. Well, Kayla said when it became clear I wasn't going to elaborate. If you need anything at all, you just let me know. Us neighbors have to stick together. Appreciate it. After she left, I called my lawyer. Patricia Hendricks was a family law specialist with a reputation for being both thorough and ruthless. She'd reviewed Laura's divorce filing and wasn't impressed. Your wife's attorney is either incompetent or overconfident, Patricia said. They're asking for everything without providing justification for any of it. What's our strategy? Document everything. Show that you're the stable parent, the one providing consistency for your daughters, and let Laura make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that show her priorities. Keep detailed records of when she sees the girls, how long she stays, whether she follows through on commitments. Most importantly, Don't engage in any behavior that could be used against you. That last part was crucial. I wanted to confront Scott Williams, to make him understand the damage he was causing. But Patricia was right. I needed to be smarter than that. The first test came on a Friday evening. Laura was supposed to pick up the girls for her weekend custody time at 6 o'clock. By 6:30, she still hadn't shown up. "Where's Mom?" Janie asked, her backpack ready by the door. "I'm sure she's just running late, sweetheart." At 7, Laura finally called. "Jason, I'm so sorry. Something came up at work and I can't make it tonight. Can we do tomorrow instead?" "The girls have been waiting for an hour, Laura." I know, I feel terrible. But this client emergency, it's Friday night. What client emergency happens on Friday night?" Silence on the other end. Then, "Look, can we just reschedule? I promise I'll make it up to them." I looked at my daughters, both trying to pretend they weren't listening to every word. "Hold on," I told Laura, then covered the phone. "Girls, your mom needs to reschedule tonight. How about we order pizza and have a movie marathon instead?" Their disappointment was obvious, but they nodded. Kids really were resilient, more resilient than they should have to be. "Tomorrow at 10, I told Laura. "Don't be late." But she was late. 2 hours late, with no explanation beyond traffic was terrible. The girls spent the morning watching the driveway, their overnight bags packed and ready. I documented everything. The pattern continued over the next few weeks. Laura would make plans with the girls, then cancel or show up late. She'd promise to attend school events, then send last-minute apologies. Meanwhile, I maintained the routine: homework help, bedtime stories, Saturday morning pancakes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Beth. "Dad," she said one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why doesn't Mom live here anymore?" I'd been dreading this question, trying to figure out how to explain adult relationships to an 11-year-old. "Sometimes people change, and they realize they want different things," I said carefully. "Is it because of that man?" My hand stilled on the dish I was washing. "What man?" "The one who was at Mom's apartment when we visited last weekend. She said he was just a friend, but—" Beth shrugged. "He didn't act like just a friend." Scott Williams had been at Laura's apartment during her custody time, in front of our daughters. I felt anger rise in my throat, but forced my voice to stay calm. "What do you mean, he didn't act like just a friend?" "He kept touching her, like her back and her shoulders, and they were whispering to each other. It was weird." I finished washing the dishes, my mind racing. Laura was introducing Scott to our daughters without discussing it with me first. More importantly, she was doing it in a way that made them uncomfortable. "How did you feel about meeting him?" I asked. "I didn't like him," Beth said bluntly. "He kept trying to be funny, but his jokes weren't actually funny. And he asked me if I thought Mom seemed happier now." "He asked you that?" "Yeah. I didn't know what to say, so I just said yes. But I don't think she does seem happier. She seems nervous all the time." That night, after the girls were asleep, I called Patricia. "She's introducing her boyfriend to your daughters without consulting you," Patricia said. "That's not necessarily illegal, but it shows poor judgment. Document the conversation with Beth. Write down exactly what she told you and when. What else can I do? Keep being the stable parent. Keep showing up, and let Laura continue making mistakes." The mistakes came faster than I expected. The following week, Laura missed Janie's school play because she was showing houses with Scott. The week after that, she forgot about Beth's parent-teacher conference entirely. But the real revelation came from an unexpected source: Jess Williams, Scott's ex-wife. I ran into her at the grocery store on a Tuesday evening, both of us clearly shopping for dinner at the last minute. Jess looked exhausted, her usual pool mom perfection replaced by the harried appearance of someone barely keeping it together. "Jason," she said, seeming genuinely surprised to see me. "How are you doing?" Hanging in there. You? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, living the dream of single motherhood while my ex-husband plays house with someone else's family. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. I'd never particularly liked Jess. She'd always struck me as shallow and gossipy, but I found myself feeling sorry for her. I heard about the divorce, I said carefully. I'm sorry. Are you? Because your wife certainly isn't. The comment hung between us, loaded with implication. I could walk away, avoid getting drawn into whatever drama existed between Laura and Jess, or I could listen to what she had to say. What do you mean? Jess looked around the produce section, making sure we were alone. Scott has a pattern, Jason. He gets bored easily. He likes the chase more than the catch, if you know what I mean. I'm not sure I follow. He pursued me for months when I was married to my first husband, made me feel special, chosen, promised me everything would be different with him. She picked up an apple, examined it, put it back. 2 years later, he was chasing someone else. Laura just happens to be the current someone else. Why are you telling me this? Because I have kids too, and I know what it's like to watch someone you love make terrible decisions that hurt innocent people. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. That's my lawyer. She's good. Really good. If you want to protect your daughters, you should call her. I looked at the card. Margaret Chen, family law attorney. The name was familiar. She'd handled several high-profile divorces in our area. Jess, Scott's not interested in being a stepfather, Jason. He's made that very clear. Your wife is going to have to choose between him and her daughters, and based on what I've seen, I don't think you'll like her choice. With that, she walked away, leaving me standing in the produce section with a business card and a growing sense of unease. That evening, I researched Margaret Chen online. Her track record was impressive. She specialized in cases involving parental alienation and had a reputation for protecting children's interests above all else. I also did some research on Scott Williams. His real estate license was current, but his sales record was mediocre. He'd been divorced twice, not once as Ty had initially discovered. Both divorces involved accusations of infidelity. Most interesting was a complaint filed against him by a former client, a married woman who claimed Scott had pursued an inappropriate relationship while helping her find a house. The complaint had been settled out of court, but the pattern was clear. Scott Williams was a predator who targeted married women, particularly those who were vulnerable or dissatisfied with their current lives. Laura wasn't his first victim, and she probably wouldn't be his last, but she was going to be his most expensive mistake. I picked up my phone and dialed Margaret Chen's number. It was time to flip the script. Margaret Chen's office was located in a sleek downtown building that screamed success and competence. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit, the kind of person who commanded attention the moment she entered a room. "Mr. Fairburn," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. "Jess Williams spoke very highly of you. I appreciate you seeing me on short notice. Family law emergencies don't keep regular business hours." She gestured to a chair across from her imposing desk. "Tell me about your situation." I gave her the full story: Laura's affair, the divorce filing, her increasing neglect of the girls, and Scott Williams' pattern of behavior. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Your current attorney is competent," she said when I finished, "but she's playing defense. That's not going to be enough in this case. What do you recommend?" "We go on the offense. Your wife has made several critical errors that we can exploit. The question is how aggressive you want to be." "I want to protect my daughters, whatever that takes." Margaret smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Good. Because Scott Williams has made a career out of destroying families, and it's time someone held him accountable." Over the next hour, she outlined a strategy that was both brilliant and ruthless. We would document every instance of Laura's neglect, every broken promise, every time she chose Scott over her responsibilities as a mother. We would also investigate Scott's background more thoroughly, looking for patterns that could be used to show his negative influence on Laura's parenting. The goal isn't just to win custody, Margaret explained. It's to make sure your daughters are protected from future instability. If Laura wants to rebuild her relationship with them, she'll have to prove she's put their needs first. I left Margaret's office feeling more hopeful than I had in weeks. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a real advocate. The first test of our new strategy came sooner than expected. Laura called on Wednesday afternoon, asking if she could take the girls to dinner on Friday. Of course, I said. What time should I have them ready? Actually, I was hoping they could spend the night. Scott wants to take us all to that new theme restaurant downtown, and it might run late. There it was, another opportunity for Laura to demonstrate her priorities. Laura, we discussed this. You need to give me more notice for overnight visits. It's just one night, Jason. Don't be difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm following the custody agreement your lawyer insisted on. Fine, then just dinner. I'll have them back by 9. Sounds good. Friday evening came, and Laura arrived on time for once. The girls were excited. They hadn't seen much of their mother lately, and they were looking forward to the outing. Be good for your mom, I told them as they climbed into Laura's car. We will, Dad, Beth promised. They drove away, and I settled in to wait. 9 o'clock came and went, then 10. At 10:30, my phone rang. Jason, the girls are having such a great time. Would it be okay if they stayed a little later? How much later? Maybe another hour or two? I could hear music and laughter in the background, adult laughter, not children's. Laura, it's a school night. They need to be home. Oh, come on. Live a little. Where are you? I told you, that new theme restaurant. What's it called? Silence. Then, look, I'll have them home by 11. That's not too late. She hung up before I could respond. I immediately called the restaurant she'd mentioned. They closed at 9 on weeknights and didn't allow children after 8. At 11:15, Laura's car pulled into my driveway. Both girls were exhausted and cranky, clearly past their bedtime. I helped them out of the car and noticed Laura wasn't alone. Scott Williams was in the passenger seat. Sorry we're late, Laura said, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was murder. Where were you really? I told you. The restaurant you mentioned closes at 9 and doesn't allow kids after 8. Laura's face flushed. We went somewhere else afterward. Where? Does it matter? They're home safe. I looked at my daughters, both swaying on their feet with exhaustion, and felt my temper rise. Girls, go get ready for bed. I'll be up in a minute to tuck you in. After they went inside, I turned back to Laura. This can't happen again. What can't happen? You lying to me about where you're taking them. You keeping them out past their bedtime on school nights. You bringing him along without discussing it with me first. Scott Williams chose that moment to step out of the car, his presence instantly commanding attention. Up close, he looked exactly how I had expected. Artificially perfect, the kind of man who spent far too much time and money on his appearance, carefully curated to present an image of success. His tailored suit, the gleam of his polished shoes, the confident way he held himself, everything about him screamed money and vanity. Jason, right? He extended a hand, his smile as smooth and practiced as a salesman trying to close a deal. Scott Williams, I've heard so much about you. I didn't take his hand. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of pretending to play nice. I'm sure you have, I said, my voice colder than I intended. His smile faltered, just for a moment before he adjusted. Look, I know this situation is awkward for everyone, but I want you to know that I care about Laura and the girls, and I'm committed to making this work. Are you? I asked, raising an eyebrow, feeling the sting of everything he had done in the past. Absolutely. Family is important to me, he said, his voice dripping with sincerity, like he'd rehearsed this 100 times. Funny, I replied, my tone sharp. Your ex-wife has a different perspective on your commitment to family. The color drained from Scott's face, and I could see a brief flicker of panic in his eyes before he regained his composure. Laura looked between us, clearly confused, caught in the middle of a tension she didn't yet understand. What's he talking about? She asked Scott, her voice trembling slightly, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. Nothing, just some misunderstanding with Jess. You know how bitter divorces can get, Scott said quickly, his eyes darting back to me, hoping I would drop it. Actually, I said, stepping closer, I was referring to your first ex-wife, and your second ex-wife, and the pattern of behavior that led to both divorces. Scott's face turned pale as the cracks in his calm facade deepened. You don't know what you're talking about, he spat, his voice losing a bit of its earlier confidence. Don't I? I said, my words coming out cold and deliberate. 2 failed marriages, both ending due to your infidelity. A complaint filed against your real estate license for inappropriate conduct with a married client. Should I go on? Laura's confusion was now replaced by a deep concern, but her voice was weak when she spoke. Jason, stop, she said, but it lacked the conviction it should have had. It was as if the weight of my words was finally sinking in, and she wasn't ready to process it all. Scott's eyes flicked nervously, sweat starting to bead on his forehead as he tried to maintain his composure. He's lying, he muttered, his voice shaky now. He backed away from me, toward the car, like he was looking for an escape route. Am I? I pressed, feeling the satisfaction of watching him unravel. Because I have documentation, court records, complaint filings, testimonies from your previous victims. I was bluffing about some of the details. I didn't have all of it, not yet. But the way Scott's face went white told me that I was close to the truth, maybe closer than I thought. Laura, we should go, he said, now visibly panicking, his voice tight. He started retreating toward the car like he wanted to disappear from the situation altogether. But Laura stood still, frozen, her eyes locked on Scott as the realization began to dawn on her. Scott? Is what he's saying true? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 questions. Scott hesitated, his eyes darting back and forth between Laura and me, clearly trying to calculate his next move. His jaw clenched, and for a brief second, I saw his true nature, a man who was used to spinning his lies, but now caught in a moment where he couldn't escape the truth. It's complicated, he began, but Laura wasn't having it anymore. Is it true? She demanded, her voice rising with desperation. Scott looked at her, then at me, his mind racing. Then, with a final shift in his demeanor, his mask completely cracked. You know what? Yes, it's true. I've made mistakes. But at least I'm not some small-time construction worker who thinks paying off a mortgage is the height of ambition. The insult was meant to wound, to drag me down to his level, but it didn't hit me the way he thought it would. In fact, it made me smile, not out of amusement, but out of something else, something deeper. You're right, I said, my smile genuine now, not mocking. I am a small-time construction worker, but I'm also a father who puts his children first. Can you say the same? Scott's face flushed with anger, his expression hardening as he turned back to the car, clearly done with this conversation. I don't have to listen to this, he muttered, getting in the car and slamming the door behind him. Laura stood between us, paralyzed, her perfect evening clearly shattered. Her world, which she had worked so hard to build around Scott, was beginning to crumble. I could see it in her eyes, the conflict, the uncertainty, the doubt she was trying to suppress. Laura, I said gently, my voice softer now, the edge gone. You have a choice to make. You can keep chasing whatever Scott Williams is selling, or you can remember what actually matters. Her eyes flickered between me and the car, her gaze lost in thought. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Instead, she whispered, "It's not that simple." I took a step closer, not wanting to push her too far, but needing her to understand the gravity of the moment. "Yes, it is. It's exactly that simple." The sound of the car window rolling down interrupted us. Scott's voice was cold, desperate. "Laura, are you coming or not?" Laura looked at me again, her eyes full of unspoken emotion. She glanced toward the house where our daughters were likely already asleep, oblivious to the storm that had just erupted. Then, slowly, she turned back to Scott. For a split second, I thought she might choose differently. I thought she might choose me, choose the life we had built, despite all the flaws, despite the mess. But then she looked at him one last time, and I saw the decision in her eyes. It wasn't the one I had hoped for. "Come on, Laura," Scott called again, his voice impatient now. "We don't have all night." With a final, lingering glance at me, Laura made her choice. She got into the car without saying another word. As the car pulled away, I stood there, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This wasn't the outcome I had wanted, but at least now I knew where I stood. And in that clarity, I could begin to rebuild what really mattered. Then she got in the car. I watched them drive away and felt something settle inside me. Not sadness, but resolve. Laura had made her choice, and now I would make mine. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret Chen's emergency line. "It's Jason Fairburn," I said when she answered. "I need to accelerate our timeline. Laura just chose Scott Williams over her daughters, and I have witnesses." "What kind of witnesses?" "The best kind. Her own children." The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. Margaret had spent the previous weeks building our case with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. Every missed pickup, every broken promise, every lie Laura had told was documented and cataloged. But the real breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Beth. "Dad," she'd said the previous weekend, "I need to tell you something about Mom's apartment." We were sitting in the backyard, raking leaves. Janie was jumping in the pile we'd already made, scattering our work to the four winds. "What about it, sweetheart?" "That man, Scott. He lives there now." I stopped raking. "What do you mean?" "His stuff is there. His clothes in the closet, his toothbrush in the bathroom. Mom said he was just visiting, but his stuff has been there for weeks." This was significant. Laura was cohabitating with Scott while seeking primary custody of our daughters. More importantly, she was lying about it. "How do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. Beth was quiet for a moment, watching Janie play. "I don't like him, Dad. He's mean to Mom when he thinks we're not listening. And he gets angry when we're too loud or when we want Mom's attention." "Mean how?" "He calls her stupid sometimes, and he told her that dealing with kids wasn't what he signed up for." I felt that familiar surge of protective anger, but kept my voice calm. "Did you tell your mom how you feel?" "I tried, but she just said I need to give him a chance, that he's still adjusting." Beth looked at me with eyes that seemed too old for her 11 years. "I don't think he wants to adjust, Dad. I think he wants us to disappear." That conversation had been the final piece Margaret needed. Children's preferences weren't the only factor in custody decisions, but they carried significant weight, especially when combined with documented evidence of poor parenting choices. The morning of the hearing, I sat in the courthouse hallway watching Laura and Scott whisper intensely to each other. Laura's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Peterson, seemed less confident than he had at our initial meeting. "Ready?" Margaret asked, appearing beside me with her briefcase and predatory smile. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm no matter what they say. Let me do the talking." The hearing itself was both tedious and emotionally brutal. Peterson presented Laura's case first, painting me as an unambitious man who couldn't provide the opportunities their clients could offer. He emphasized Scott's financial success and Laura's career advancement, arguing that the girls would benefit from their upwardly mobile lifestyle. Then Margaret stood up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She systematically dismantled Laura's case with surgical precision. Every missed pickup was documented with timestamps and witness statements. Every lie was exposed with phone records and testimony. Laura's cohabitation with Scott was proven through the girl's own statements and photographic evidence Margaret's investigator had gathered. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected witness: Jess Williams. Margaret had subpoenaed Scott's ex-wife, and Jess delivered her testimony with the fury of a woman who'd been wronged one too many times. "Scott Williams is a predator," she said, looking directly at the judge. "He targets married women, particularly those who are vulnerable or dissatisfied. He promises them a better life, then discards them when the novelty wears off. He destroyed my first marriage, then abandoned me when I was no longer useful to him." "Objection," Peterson said weakly. "Overruled," Judge Martinez replied. "The witness may continue." "He has no interest in being a stepfather," Jess continued. "He's made that clear to multiple people. He sees children as obstacles to be overcome, not family members to be embraced. Any woman who chooses Scott Williams over her children will eventually lose both." The courtroom was silent when she finished. Laura was crying quietly, and Scott looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Margaret's closing argument was devastating. "Your Honor, this case isn't about money or social status. It's about what's best for two young girls who need stability and consistency. The evidence shows that Ms. Fairburn has repeatedly chosen her relationship with Mr. Williams over her responsibilities as a mother. She has lied to the court, to her ex-husband, and to her own children about the nature of her living situation. She has broken promises, missed important events, and exposed her daughters to an unstable and potentially harmful relationship." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Mr. Fairburn, on the other hand, has been the constant in these children's lives. He has maintained their routines, attended their school events, and put their needs above his own desires. He has provided them with a stable home environment, while their mother has chosen chaos and deception. The choice before this court is simple: award custody to the parent who has consistently demonstrated good judgment and put the children first, or reward the parent who has shown a pattern of selfish decision-making that has already harmed these children's emotional well-being." Judge Martinez called a brief recess to review the evidence. Laura and Scott huddled with Peterson in the corner, their conversation growing increasingly heated. I could see their relationship fracturing in real time, the stress of the hearing exposing the cracks that had been hidden beneath the surface. When court reconvened, Judge Martinez's expression was grim. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today," she began. "This is a difficult case involving two parents who clearly love their children but have very different ideas about what constitutes appropriate parenting." My heart sank. That sounded like the prelude to a compromise ruling that would split custody evenly. "However," the judge continued, "the evidence overwhelmingly supports one conclusion. Ms. Fairburn has demonstrated a pattern of behavior that prioritizes her romantic relationship over her children's needs. She has been dishonest with this court and has exposed her daughters to an unstable living situation." Laura was crying openly now, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. "Therefore, I am awarding primary physical custody to Mr. Fairburn, with supervised visitation for Ms. Fairburn until she can demonstrate that she has addressed the issues raised in this hearing." The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. My daughters were safe, but their family was still broken. Outside the courthouse, Laura approached me while Scott waited by their car. "Jason," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I know you are, Laura, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. What happens now? Now you decide what matters more, your relationship with Scott Williams or your relationship with your daughters, because you can't have both. She looked over at Scott, who was checking his phone with obvious impatience, then back at me. He said he loved me, she said, almost to herself. Maybe he did. But love isn't enough if it comes at the expense of everything else that matters. Laura nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I've made such a mess of everything. Messes can be cleaned up, Laura, but it takes work, and it takes time, and it takes admitting that you were wrong. Will you help me? With the girls, I mean. When I'm ready to try again? I looked at this woman I'd once loved, now broken and lost, and finally beginning to understand the cost of her choices. Ask me when you've figured out who you want to be, I said, and when you can prove that our daughters come first. That evening, I sat on my back porch watching Beth and Janie play in the yard. The house was officially ours, all of it, thanks to the judge's ruling and Laura's inability to contribute to the mortgage she'd once demanded I pay off with a home equity loan. My phone buzzed with a text from Ty. Heard you won big today. Congratulations, brother. I typed back, thanks, justice served. But as I watched my daughters laugh and play, I realized that justice and satisfaction weren't the same thing. I had protected my family and preserved our home, but the victory had come at a cost that would take years to fully understand. The pool lights came on automatically as the sun set, casting ripples of blue light across the water. Tomorrow, the girls would ask about their mother. Next week, they'd wonder when they could see her again, and someday, they'd be old enough to understand the full story of how their family fell apart. I would be here for all of it. The questions, the tears, the slow process of healing, because that's what fathers do. They stay. They provide stability. They put their children first, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when the cost is everything else they thought they wanted. Laura had chosen excitement over security, passion over responsibility, the promise of a better life over the reality of the one she already had. Scott Williams had offered her a fantasy, and she'd traded her family to chase it. But fantasies don't last. Eventually, reality comes calling, and the bill always comes due. I pulled out my phone and deleted Laura's number. Whatever happened next, whatever choices she made, my daughters and I would face them together. We were a family, smaller than before, but stronger, and sometimes that's the best you can hope for. The mortgage was paid off, the house was ours, and tomorrow I'd wake up in my own bed, in my own home, with my daughters safe under my roof. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd fought for, and that made all the difference.